It's now with Chris Weston from IG Markets in Melbourne. Chris, just looking at how we're set to open today, SPI's up just a few points, not a huge amount of news overnight, but some volatility. Equities holding up fairly nicely, I guess, when you consider the gains we've made over the past few sessions, apart from yesterday.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, the S&P's up 5 days in a row now. I think it had a bit of a chance to pull back. It was down 0.3% at one stage. Again, we saw that sort of buy the dip mentality creeping through. Valuations on the S&P, according to some strategists, are probably coming a little bit lofty now. But you know, when you've got the Bernanke put, you've got the Draghi put, and now obviously you've got the PBOC put in place at the moment, you've got this liquidity field rally that's keeping asset prices relatively well supported at the moment. So, yeah, I think you know, the fact is it's held up relatively well. The equity lead hasn't been overly positive for us today. I think we'll probably open in some marginal positive territory, 10 to 15 points higher. But you know, the currency markets were a little bit more volatile, as you say. You know, currency volatility on 1 month at the money puts is still very, very low at the moment. But you know, if you look at the euro was trading 124 around that sort of level when we were trading yesterday in Asia, and that was sort of being held up at the 50-55 day moving average. It collapsed down to sort of the 122.60 level yesterday. Now, what's happening in Europe is very, very interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of people positioned for ECB action sooner rather than later. That's obviously not going to happen in my mind. I think you're not going to see that until perhaps September, if not October. So anyone who'd been positioned for that really quick ECB bond buying side of things is being disappointed, and we're starting to see people unwind those bets. But people still are looking to buy the dips on the euro on the premise that there will be some sort of buying program later on. If you look at the Italians overnight, some very positive steps. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Monti quite clearly saying we are not going to require assistance. It does seem now that they're having internal debates. They are having cabinet meetings to discuss whether tapping the EFSF and then subsequently having the ECB buying bonds is going to be a good situation. You've also got Mr. Neuer, who's the French contribution to the ECB board, coming out and saying that bond buying should be sooner rather than later, and that's at odds with some of the comments we saw from Mr. Ising last night. He's the ex-ECB economist, coming out and saying that Germany shouldn't be bullied into this side of things and they shouldn't be buying bonds, and that was the reason why the euro did pull back to those below the 123 level. But yeah, it's very interesting to see what's happening in that side of things. I personally sit in the camp that something will happen, but not so soon, and that's why I think you know, we will get that buying as we melt up into the September ECB meeting and further on. But as we've seen today, I mean, the lead-in from Wall Street hasn't been spectacular, but it's good to see markets holding up for a fifth day there.
Chris, this move out of defensives and into the cyclicals we're starting to see at the moment, is that all about getting exposure to central bank stimulus, or is this more about repositioning in terms of you think things are going to get structurally better on a very slow, gradual basis, a permanent basis going forward?
Well, it's a very hard one to answer. I mean, it's a good question. I think, yeah, there has been this side of things where there is still a lot of people out there expecting intervention from the Fed. Perhaps at the September meeting, I don't personally believe that we're going to see them actually come out and do an unadulterated asset purchase program, but there are people out there hoping that's going to happen, and they're going to use the Jackson Hole meeting as a soundboard or a potential springboard for that to happen. I personally think they'll be using the discount window and actually coming out and incentivise banks to lend. The ECB, as I just discussed, are coming out, and the worse the situation gets, the more likely Spain and potentially Italy are going to be coming in doing that. So you've got that kind of, both those two areas of the world seem to be nicely contained with different central bank exposure further down the line. Of course, we got the what we saw yesterday with the worse than expected data coming through the industrial production numbers. The retail sales obviously a little bit weaker in China, but of course the market's thinking positively now that perhaps we're now going to start seeing further easing on the interest rates and perhaps a reserve ratio requirement cuts as well, and more infrastructure done on the fiscal level. So the market's thinking positively from that. Now, I'm not going to claim to say that I've ever been to China and claim to say that I'm an actual, you know, adversary of what's happening in China. I don't think anyone really knows, but you know, look at the people who actually really know China. Let's look at Rio, let's look at Xstrata, let's look at some of the other companies like Freeport-McMoran. These are the guys that deal with the Chinese on a daily basis. Think of the RBA as well. These are the guys who speak to the PBOC. These guys in recent times have been saying, and look at Rio's result, the Chinese growth is stabilising. We're going to see 500 new infrastructure investment projects over the course of this year and into 2013. Chinese growth will stabilise and actually will grow. Electrical output is actually starting to pick up, and that's seen as a leading indicator for commodity prices as well. So the guys who actually generally deal with the Chinese are saying things are looking a little bit better, and that's why we're starting to see these defensives, which are hugely outperformed. People are saying, let's get exposure to something that perhaps has had this underperformance, hence why resources are doing very well this week and energy stocks are doing very well this week. You can look at the small odds as well, which generally do lag the market when the market's pessimistic. This week the small odds up over 3% as well. So people are trying to get exposure to small cap stocks as well, showing that we are seeing a bit more confidence coming through, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And reporting season continuing today. We've got Goodman Group, also Crown out with some numbers. We love watching this one because it's a bit of a big soap opera at the moment. We've got James Packer involved and with this big casino that he wants to build in Sydney. It sounds like they're going to have to tap the market for cash.
Well, I mean, that's some people are talking about that, but I think what we're looking to, I mean, obviously, like you say, we're going to have a look at what's going to happen with their investment in Echo, perhaps like further rhetoric about their investment in Tabcorp as well. Yeah, there's certainly things to like about Crown. It hasn't significantly outperformed the market, and I think if you take a step back, and one of the things we are looking very closely at earnings season thus far, I mean, it's only just started, but we are seeing this really clear trade, and it's very much built on the side where stocks have really outperformed the market. You think News Corp, think Telstra, an inline result will just not cut the mustard, and people will look to sell into that at the moment, and we'll probably see further selling coming through in Tabcorp, in Telstra today. You can look on the other hand, Bradkin, Computershare coming out with great results in stocks that have been beaten up pretty hard this year, and people are looking to buy into those names. So looking at Crown, it's in line, so we haven't really got that mantra playing through. I mean, we are going to see good growth coming through. Net profit should be up around about 22%. The dividend's going to be quite strong at 19 cents as well. Yeah, you're looking at the Melbourne casinos. Melbourne casinos is the star at the moment. That's where the big growth is coming through. I think that the market wants to hear more about VIP as well, because they've been putting a lot of emphasis on that. But of course, any kind of rhetoric about any kind of asset involvement in what's happening in New South Wales, the Echo side, the Echo dramas, and of course, the Tabcorp side of things as well is going to be closely watched. But good growth from these guys, and the stock's up about 5%. It's just in line with the market there.
Yeah, and Goodman Group, Chris, we're actually getting it out right now. Full year profit coming in at $408 million with a final distribution of 9 cents. What does that sound like to you? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here, so if you haven't had a chance to look at expectations, we understand. But yeah, full year profit of 108 and distribution of 9 cents. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I was looking at the EPS side of things, Kate. I mean, I know the stock's up 33% year to date. It's been a great place to be. It's not one that I've been in, unfortunately. I would have loved to have been receiving a 33%. I mean, I'm looking at the EPS side of things. Yeah, exactly. 30.5 cents. I mean, if you've got the EPS side of things, that's probably the number I was looking at quite closely at 30.5 cents. But yeah, I don't think we're expecting too much here. I mean, look, we're talking about a company that's recently given us guidance. Only recently, they came out with an operational strategy on 20th of June. So I'd be very surprised if the market, at least from an operational perspective, in terms of what they're hearing from the numbers, would differ from that. They've had a chance to come out and tell the market only recently what was happening there. So I'd be I think investors will probably not be looking as closely at the numbers because they've already just recently been announced. It's about what's happening in Brazil. It's about what's happening in the US platform and other bits and pieces about that. Their funding partners as well. So I think if I was a shareholder in this, I'd be looking more about the commentary about their expansion plans, probably more so than the numbers, because I think they've only just recently been released. Yeah,
and we are hearing they expect full year profits to rise to $524 million. So we'll continue to watch that in financial year 2013. We haven't got the EPS through yet, so we'll come back to you later on in the day with that. Chris Weston, thanks so much for that instant analysis. We really appreciate it.
Cheers, Kate.
Looking to a company now that reported yesterday, Tabcorp shares closing more than 3% lower yesterday, despite a stronger result from continuing operations in the company's first yearly report since the spin-off of its